Okay, so we have had plenty of demonstration, plenty of kind of practice with our tools, just like last time. So now we are finally going to go ahead and we're going to begin our first pass edit in the cut panel. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that I want to make absolutely clear is another irritating quirk of the cut panel. The more I talk about this, the more it seems that I'm down on it, but it does have its uses, honestly. It doesn't matter where we create a timeline in the cut panel. If I go into my timelines bin and I right click and I make a new timeline and I set up, let's say I want 2 video tracks, I want 2 mono tracks just like last time, start at 1 hour, and I'm going to call this one the silent first pass V1. Well, in fact, just first pass. V1 is somewhat redundant. And make it empty. I'm going to create that timeline, and you'll notice it has not created a timeline in my current bin. It doesn't do that. No matter where we are in the cut panel, if we create a timeline by any means, it always lands on the top level of our bin directory. It doesn't land in the bin we currently have open like anywhere else in Resolve. So I do have to drag this into my timelines bin, and then I know where it is. This is just one of those things. The cut panel is designed to make use of like the top level bin, the master bin. I don't like keeping assets or timelines in the master bin. It's just the way I work, right? It's just the way I happen to work. I don't like doing it. I just find it too easy for it to become this giant gaggle of timelines, graphics, audio, video, whatever. I like to organize things. In my particular opinion, organizing things like this is good practice. So we are going to get started. We have a shooting script for this project, and it's different from a standard script. The shooting script is quite prescriptive of our edit. It does tell us in places specifically what angles we want to use. We're not going to be guided by it that heavily. And one of the reasons for that is what was actually captured is somewhat different from what was in the shooting script, and that's quite normal. You can find all kinds of random variables out on Shoot. Bits of dialogue might change from here to there. How it's delivered might change. You might find that, recording dialogue as somebody's walking down a wide impractical, so you have to go to a close-up to record it. All kinds of different things can change what we capture. So just like the other script, we're going to use it as a starting point. And if we believe we can improve the drama through our own edit, we're going to do that. To quote Red Letter Media, and they're all right, really, the film should not be a literal interpretation of the script. We have artistic license, we have an opportunity to be creative and to try and express the drama in our own terms as best as we think we can. So, we're going to get started. The first scene is scene 4. And we're just going to open the scene 4 bin and open the scene 4 rushes bin. Now, this is quite a simple scene, really. We have a few shots of Tom walking around, and then we have him on the phone. And this is all that really happens in the scene, is that Tom walks down the pier for a while, takes out his phone, and answers to Steve, who is a violent person living in the same flat. So what we need to do is look at our script, and if we have a quick skim, Tom walks down the picturesque background, the intrusive buzz of his mobile again, that's a bit of a sound design cue. Tom walks on and ignores his mobile. Tom crosses the road in front of the pier into tracking shot of him. This is what I mean about it being a shooting script. Past the shellfish cellar, and into the skate park. When he's in the skate park, he finally answers his mobile phone, POV of Tom. Okay, so let's break that down into main beats, and let's talk a little bit about the dramatic pace we're looking for here, because it's very different from Gym Candy. What we want is Tom walking down the pier, and then maybe walking up a shot like this, And then we're looking for skate park. These skaters are, they're an important part of the narrative. They don't do or say anything particularly important. They're symbolic of the life that Tom wants but cannot have due to Steve's coercive control. So we do need to make sure that the skaters are present throughout, because they're there to symbolize what Tom wants to be in the life that Tom wants to leave that he currently cannot. So we do have to keep these guys in mind. They are quite an important narrative symbol within this project. And then we have I'm almost home, there we are. And at that point we cut to a flashback of scene 8. So let's talk a little bit about pace and some of the material we have to work with here. Now, this is a very tragic film. The whole thing is very melancholic. The final grade, the final sound mix was very, very bleak and very barren. The whole thing is meant to be very tragic. Like I said before, this isn't a story about things somehow getting better. This is very much a kind of day in the life of someone trapped in these circumstances. So we're not looking for a particular energy. We're not looking for a fast cut. We're looking for quite a slow pace here, because the tone is reflective. The tone is very melancholic and very reflective. This character, Tom, is constantly reflecting on his situation, and we want to try and sell that idea through our edit, through how we pace our edit. And we do that by using very long cuts, almost uncomfortably long cuts. If we linger on a character for like almost too long, it becomes uncomfortable for the viewer. And that's actually kind of what we're going for here. We want this to be uncomfortable. It deals with an extremely uncomfortable subject. We don't want it to be appealing. We don't want it to be, well, we want it to be entertaining, but we don't want it to be amusing. So, an entertaining, the literal meaning of the term entertain means to hold the attention of. So I don't mean kind of laughing at it or anything like that. I mean it holds your attention, it draws you in, you become involved in the story, but at the same time an element of this should make the viewer uncomfortable. That's a legitimate goal for this project, because it's trying to, it's trying to give a message about a very unpleasant subject. So what we want to do is have these very long shots. And Tom walks for a long time here. And if we just play this through at a normal speed, we'll have to get rid of the audio for this one because we've got the director giving directions. But the sound design for this, we could strip this down, and the sound design for this would be a lot of fun, actually. So this is a long cut, right? We're really looking at him just walking here. But given the situation he's stuck in and what must be playing on his mind, this just long emphasis on him just passing through this environment, all of these people living their lives oblivious to what's going on. He's surrounded but also isolated at the same time. So we've just got this really long and melancholic focus on this character. So I think for this I want to pick a shot of Tom walking. And I'm probably going to start here. And let's just see how long we've got. Until we lose track here. So I like the idea of this first shot being this. So I'm going to set my I/O. And I think just as he begins to leave, I think I'll set my O there, and let's make our first edit. Now remember, especially in the cut page, Shift F12 is our friend. It's predictable, it's easy to use, it doesn't do any of that weird second video track nonsense that we get from the other tools. So Shift F12. Once we have one cut already down, this was a standard smart insert, but Shift F12 otherwise is our friend in this window. So now we've got this, and we just have this very long, very quiet, wide shot. And what I particularly like about this wide is how isolated he looks in this angle. And wides are good for doing this. A wide can make a character look very small in their environment. It can make them look vulnerable. If we zoom out on a character who's surrounded by their environment and is just this very small, insignificant thing in their environment, we can sell that idea of vulnerability and isolation, and we're going for that with Tom's character, so I think this fits quite nicely. In the real film, there's a lot more flashback material that helps punctuate this as he's walking. I couldn't get clearance for all of that, so we will have to do the best we can. And also, what's depicted in the flashbacks would violate Udemy's content guidelines as well, so I had to cut out what I couldn't show on this site, which I hope you understand about that. So this is quite nice and slow, and it's quite reflective, and then it ends here. And I think the next thing I want is one of these angles. Those skateboarders made the audio of this project a nightmare. The audio guy did so well in this project. I think it was all ADR and he just built everything around it. Okay, cool. So, I think I want to start around here. And this cut might be a little bit janky right now, but again, it's our first pass, and that's all we're doing for this exercise. We're just, grounding ourselves in the cut panel. And I do want this to be quite a long cut. Again, I want to keep in that long pace, and I think there. Remember, hold K and L or J to slow shuttle. And I want to cut away before he becomes difficult to see. There. I want to let these. What I want is I want to let the skaters separate from his form a little bit out there. If we get what we call tangents like that, it can look a little bit odd. And a tangent is when, well, there's a lot of meanings to it, but a tangent can mean two objects colluding and failing to show their full form. It's a term used in illustration as well. Look at me. I take illustration courses in Udemy and I've finished none of them. I'm not the only one. Okay, so we've got our edit there. I'm going to Shift F12 that in. And let's just see how these two cut together. Okay, that's a little bit rough for now. And what I might be tempted to do in second pass is actually, I would say J cut, which is down to the left, is to J cut this roller skate, this skateboard sound underneath this edit to just help with the transition. Like I said, in the final version of the film, there was a flashback at this edit point, which helps disguise the cut between the two angles, but we'll work with what we have in this one. Okay, good. That's good. That introduces the skaters as well, and we've got this very long, slow, reflective walk. And whilst he's walking, don't forget we're going to have the ringing of his cell phone going off as he's walking, and he's just ignoring this. He's putting it off. He just doesn't want to answer this phone because of the guy on the other side. Okay, so the next thing is going to be probably one of these angles here, probably this angle. And I like I think we've had enough slow walking here. We've had about 20 seconds of slow walking, which I think is reflective enough. I'm going to start on this angle with him already here. And I might need to use a bit of an audio edit to sell this, which I might not be able to do in the cut panel, but we'll see. So let's see what we've got here. Okay, there's a bit of a blooper on that guy here, so let's scan through. Okay, cool. Okay, so I like the idea of starting just about here. And we just want a few seconds of him on his phone. We're going to put the dialogue from a different angle underneath this. So let's see what we've got. Let's read out the lines. I'm almost home. I'm just coming onto the estate now. Cool. Now, have we got that blooper back in there? No, that's good. Now, I want to continue this just until these guys... That's frustrating. Okay, maybe we shove this back a little bit here. I'm almost home. I'm just coming onto the estate now. Cool, I can put my out point there. And then Shift F12. Obviously, I'm not delivering with the exact same cadence as him, but that gives me a nice little guideline here. And again, we're keeping with this quite slow pace. We will tighten this up, well, you might tighten this up a lot in the second pass, but for now, this kind of rough edit is good. Okay, and I might just want to trim that in a little bit. Cool, okay. So that might actually be quite long, now that I really think on it. So we might even trim that down a little bit. And what I'm actually thinking now, just about the dialogue, is that we already know what this relationship is like, because there's an earlier flashback in the film, so we don't actually need to hear it. And sticking with the theme of silent reflection, what if we don't? What if we don't actually use that dialogue and we just show Tom on his phone for a few seconds? Then what if we cut to the reverse close-up here? What if we cut to that close-up and he's just closing his phone and you don't actually hear him speak? Because we can pretty much know it's going to be something controlling, it's going to be something unpleasant. So we don't necessarily need to hear it, we don't need it made explicit. We can actually leave that to the imagination of the viewer, because then that begs the question. Obviously, let's find a close-up. So, what if we just go here and let's just see. I tell you what, I like the idea of this. And I've just noticed I'm not using source tape at all, but that's because I'm so used to using the edit panel. But I like the idea of just having his reaction to the phone call and us not necessarily hearing what is going on. And I think that's actually a little bit more disturbing, a little bit more dramatic if it's just left to the imagination. So let's give that a go. Let's see how this goes, because I don't think we need every single beat. I think it's actually more effective without that dialogue. Let's just cut this a little bit. There we go. And then, okay, exhale. That was clearly a bad conversation. Walk forwards. And then there's a really, really nice somber expression into the distance here. So let's see how this edits. And that's a really awkward edit, so we could... Oh, what am I doing? And I think if I go into the tools, I might just... Oops, what am I doing? And just squeeze out a few of the distractions in here and zoom in a little bit. And I might just... Don't get any ideas about the watermark, by the way. See if I can just squeeze out that awkward little detail there. That's a little bit awkward. I think if we put blanking down there, we're going to lose that guy's head, so maybe just a better framing there will do it. And then put the phone down, so let's go back and check how this edits. Maybe just a little bit longer there. There we go. And then a devastated look into the distance. Okay, that's good. So that's hitting all of the big beats for scene 4. And then we have a flashback. Bit of a auditory interference there. So, interior house day, Steve glowers menacingly at Tom, who's sitting at the floor, looking down vacantly, unresponsive and terrified. And that's scene 8, this one. So, we're done with scene 4. We can play around with this in the second pass, or you can, should you choose to. But let's go back to the master bin, take a look at scene 8. Now, we've got 3 shots in scene 8. And we've got one of Steve, who's just standing there looking intimidating. And then we've got Tom, who's too scared to look him in the eye. And this is what I could get cleared. Then there's a little kind of movement of his cheek there that implies he's kind of about to cry. So this is as much as I could get cleared, and it's as much as I could, you know, publish on Udemy without violating any content guidelines, because it does get dark. So what we basically need is this guy's, like, the villain's expression, and we need the main character's reaction to him. So let's just take a few seconds out, and we don't need much here. In fact, this is the one thing where we might actually break our slow pace of edit, because what we could do is we could try to frame this as something that's emotionally overwhelming. And what we would do there is, rather than have these long, reflective, melancholic edits that we've been using so far, we could just flash these quite quickly, as if this thing is playing on a loop in his head. He can't control this, just playing this scene in his head on a loop. And it also draws attention to this, right? It draws attention to this flashback. It makes us see that the flashback and the situation in the flashback is very different. It's very different from our current scene, because it's a different scene. right? The flashback's a different location, it's a different part of the story. So we can sell that whole it being different from where he currently is by also changing up the pace of our edit as well. So let's experiment with that. Let's have just 2 very quick, impactful edits and then see what we think of that. So I am going to just IO in a few seconds of Steve and a few seconds of Tom. And I don't even need an out point there, and I will Shift F12 that in as well. And let's see. Now I want a transition here, and I want a fade to white because this is a flashback. So, transitions, dip to color. Dip to color dissolve lets us dip to a color of our choice. Fading to black is normally like, well, it can be the end of a film, it can be a change of time, it can be a change of location. A fade to white, if anyone's ever seen Scrubs, a fade to white normally signifies a transition to something that's not immediately and physically real. A fade to white can be a flashback. They're very often to fades to delusions. So if anyone's played a video game called Spec Ops: The Line, that famously used a lot of fade to white for very delusional episodes the main character was having. So a fade to white here is justifiable. And I'm just going to drag that down. And I want it to be quite quick and intense, so I'm just going to squeeze that in a little bit and we'll see what we think there. And with a bit of sound design, we can sell that. I might not make that a pure white. Actually, the pure white's a little bit intrusive, so... let's see what we can do. And maybe I don't have those controls in the cut panel, actually. Okay, maybe I need to go to the edit panel. Yeah, you only have the inspector in the edit panel here, which is really frustrating. And I might just make it a slight fade to grey. And just make that a little bit less of a punch in the eyes when it happens, right? Because pure white can be a little bit intrusive. We've not got a super bright look. The final film is not super bright as well. So, like 100% white would be a little bit of an eye punch. So let's avoid that. That's better. That's kind of, yeah. Then we have flashback, flashback, fade back in. Cool. So let's go out of our transitions, back into the media pool. Right, so this has been a good start to this first pass. We're now going to proceed on to scene 10, which is where we spend like the rest of this exercise. Good, so this has been a good start. Click on through